So the last is that Professor Ferenc Hörcher, who is a historian of political thought, poet, and member of the Roger Scruton Legacy Foundation, is going to give a keynote about the life and legacy of Sir Roger Scruton. Please give him a warm welcome.
Thank you, everyone. I hope that you can hear what I say. Thanks for the organizers and the sponsors for having me for this occasion. And let me start with a captatio benevolentiae. I have never seen an audience like this for a philosophy day, a day for political philosophy, such a large one, intellectually eager and politically motivated. So congrats for that, and go for that. As for an introduction, beside the one that you have already got about me, let me circulate these two books which I happened to publish in the last 2 years. One is about a political philosophy of conservatism, which I circulate in this direction, and the other one is the political philosophy of the European city. So please feel to look at it, but then take care to finish the circle in order to bring it back. So my job is today to try to sum up what we were talking about today, which is the life and the legacy of Sir Roger Scruton. And the reason why I can do that is, beside being one of the older ones of this grouping, is that in the last year and a half, I've been working on a manuscript about Sir Roger. And that manuscript addresses the issue of politics and the arts in Roger Scruton's conservative philosophy. So what I try to do here is to try to show you the interaction between the two halves, the two parts of his legacy, which is his interest in politics and his interest in art. Both of them, of course, philosophical interests, but also to try to show, as the title implies, that there is a connection between his life achievements and his oeuvre, the written output of his work. And I thought that this photograph might be a good starting point, because it shows that indeed he represents a certain attitude, a certain character, and that is the character of the Christian knight. Even if you can have arguments about his religious belief, we will talk about that a little bit later. But the picture that we have here is about the royal subject who takes the honor from the prince, and that's the honor for his life achievements in philosophy and public affairs. So let's see what have I got here for you to offer as this summary. I thought that 15 slides might make the impossible job to try to sum up life achievements of more than 50 books. So you have to appreciate that this is an impossible mission. Yet, and I know that you might be tired. So 10 slides about his life and 5 slides about the legacy. I think that they are representative. You can surely find other aspects of his achievements, but I thought that this might be interesting to look at as a kind of a pensum. What I am doing here is to do the pensum, to do the duty of ours, to have a look at the achievements of this philosopher in the right order. So let's start from the beginnings, from the family that he was born into, and in particular his relationship to his father, because I think it's crucial for us all, and in particular crucial for him, that he had a very strong and powerful influence from his father, who I always used his words so that you can check whether what I say is what he does say or did say. Here, two aspects. On these slides, I try to share with you two aspects of this relationship, which is a troublesome relationship. One is that the father was a kind of a demonic character. He was not the sort of loving father that we all need, but someone who was quite difficult to live with for a child that he was. And the other aspect is that this father, this demonic father, was also very powerfully motivated in politics and representing the old-fashioned socialist type of the English school, as he calls it. And that's, I think, very important for a number of reasons. First of all, because sons always rebel against fathers. So there was a possibility to rebel against socialism. But also because this rebellion is always, it has got two phases. One is the rebellion, and the second one is the return. So to say, the homecoming that we all try to achieve at the end of our career, and that's what Roger also achieved. So even though he claimed that it was not a happy home that he experienced, he made peace with his father by the end of his life, and what he provided for his own family was a better chance for a love relationship within the family. So we said that he had to rebel against the socialist heritage of his father. But the occasion for that was provided by the French. For the British, it's always the French who are the causes of disorder, and that's and rebellion and war even. And that's the revolution of 1968, the student revolution. And Roger himself, who was a student, a postgraduate student by that time, but one who was actually in Paris in those days, discovered this aggressive general sentiment, volonté générale of the Paris youth, and he identified himself as opposed to that sort of attitude, that sort of political culture based on vandalism and aggression. So his mentality was countered with that. And in his memories of these events, what he says is that he was in those days reading de Gaulle's, General de Gaulle's memoirs. And what he actually discovered was that, well, perhaps de Gaulle has a point here. Of course, he was called the old fascists by the students, but what he was actually was a national hero, and a national hero who reflected on his own role and who claimed that the nation is defined not by institutions or borders or anything external, but something more deeply rooted, i.e. language, religion, and high culture. So that's the direction Roger wanted to take. He returned to Cambridge and got a fellowship to Peterhouse College, which is important for the special reason that Peterhouse is the par excellence conservative hotbed in Cambridge. And he has got a lot of important fellowships that he experiences, and in particular with the art historian and historian of architecture, David Watkin, who was mentioned actually by one of the earlier speakers. And he is inspired by his, David's antagonistic relationship to his own supervisor, the art historian Nicholas Pevsner, who was the arch-modernist architectural theorist of the day. And that's the reason, the source of his interest in classical architecture. Why? Because he was educated in the Cambridge model, in the old-style Cambridge model, which assumes that authorities should be questioned and orthodoxy spurned. So, in fact, our job here is today to question Roger's own authority and to try to make sense of it in that context. And that's why I appreciated especially the first session today when the students had questions and problems with Roger's heritage. I think that's very important to read with an eye questioning and critical. So that's why that's his heritage. That's actually what he did with his own supervisors and the elderly generation. And then he defended his doctoral thesis on aesthetics, on the philosophy of art. So Roger's basic education is in the philosophy of art, I would claim. And then as a result of this revolutionary experience in Paris, what he did was to turn into a conservative intellectual. And I think that a number of you here are in that very situation that he was in after finishing his doctoral studies. What to do in a totally alien environment, because that's what he experienced there. How to proceed, as we have heard one of the questions this morning. What to do in that situation. And what he did was to establish this organ, this conservative journal, the Salisbury Review, which had no authors at the beginning. He had to write the articles themselves. So, you know, you can imagine the impetus, the momentum that he had to bring to make it work. And that's what he did. And he, in fact, caused a lot of great scandals and fights because of his rather outspoken and critical attitude. He was anti-communist, he was anti-modernist, he was against postmodernism, and he was anti-egalitarian. So all the basic taboos of the post-war consensus was questioned by him, and I think that gave it the possibility to open up the discussion. And it also, of course, caused a lot of trouble for his own life, I have to admit. So don't expect much better if you do the similar trajectory. But you know, there is this moral reward that one can get. And I think that his continuous and frequent returns to Eastern Europe already before the fall of the Iron Curtain is due to that sort of moral reward that he got in Eastern Europe. It's very funny to see a Cambridge-educated British intellectual to spend his days and weeks and years in Eastern Europe, first giving underground courses in Prague, then in Krakow and Warsaw, and also then in Budapest, so in the V4 countries, very interestingly. But that's what he did. And actually, this is a novel that he wrote about his own experiences. He learned the language, Czech, and he fell in love. That's part of the game. Be careful about it. And also, he experienced how totalitarian regimes actually work. So he did not find it out from his readings only. Well, he had the direct experience. And that's something which is very important for me. I'm coming from a country which was under communist rule until 1990, and that's when I was 26 years old. So I was brought up under the socialist regime, communist regime, one would say, and that's why I appreciate that Sir Roger had the courage and the stamina to do that. It was a real risk that he was taking. And I think that, in fact, there is still something lacking in this achievement. I think that the post-1990 Europe has not yet paid its due to the division of Europe after the Second World War, and there is no confrontation with the heritage of the post-communist past. And I think a lot of the problems within Europe, as well as between Europe and the most eastern part of Europe, is due to that. Well, as I mentioned, Roger was looking for scandals and conflicts. And in one of that, he was also responsible. He admitted later in his conversations with Mark Dooley that, in fact, it was a mistake of him to take a contract with this tobacco company, Japan Tobacco International, for which he had to write articles in favor of smoking. So that's a rather important and sensitive issue in his career. He admitted his mistake, but he also did that, of course. That was also a provocation, because what he thought was that there was a kind of a global tendency to control individuals who wanted to destroy themselves with alcohol, drugs, or smoking. They have no external power, Roger argued, has the explicit right to force me to be healthy. That was the basic argument. You can of course argue against that as well, but that's how it happened. So they decided actually to leave Britain at that moment. They were newly married, full of hope, but attacked and destroyed as far as their consultancy business was concerned, and that means financial insecurity. So they, took the decision to emigrate in a way. That was an intellectual emigration on his side, I would claim. And they bought this plantation house in Virginia, and got academic positions and, semi-academic, semi-political positions in the US. And what they learned is how important it is for us to go home. That's very important for everyone. If you have not been abroad, you don't know how important it is for you to return home. And that's the experience that he had. Of course, he had some years earlier at Boston College and other places in the US in the early 90s. But to live for years with the decision that, well, I might remain here was a crucial experience, and it led him to the recognition that, well, he cannot do that. Well, he has to return home. Why? Because he belongs to Britain and to England in particular, and to the farm that they bought together beforehand. And that's the farm. It still survives, and we can go there and see Sophie Scruton, who is still around and taking care of this field. It's a huge one, actually, and a lot of work there. But apparently, I was there last year, and it was a great experience to see that it survives Sir Roger. So in a way, the legacy has this material manifestation. There is a farm still working on, and that leads me to inform you that my relationship to Roger is about 30 years old. I got acquainted with him in '92. That was just after the transition from communism, when I met him in Budapest, in the newly funded Collegium Budapest, which was a research institute for advanced study. I was there a junior fellow, and he was one of the invited speakers there. And he had that red hair that you could always recognize, and that's how I got acquainted with him. And then I worked for 10 years as a journalist, so I made interviews with him on a regular basis, which made me the opportunity to keep that contact alive. And this is one of the last photographs or occasions of Sir Roger's life. In the 2010s, he returned to Eastern Europe, back from the US. Again, he wanted to see how these poor countries are surviving. They're joining the EU and giving expert advice how to handle those difficulties. And this picture shows both Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, when he gave the Hungarian Order of Merit to him, which is given by the president of the country. And I had the good fortune to be present at that occasion, because I think that's a symbolical admission that Roger gave a very powerful symbolic help for this part of the world. And politicians had to admit it, or were ready to admit it. And we mentioned earlier the commission that he took part in, which was his last project, the Building Better, Building Beautiful Commission. This was, he had the position of the chair of the commission, and that's, I think, an important thing, that a philosopher can have such a public role in a democracy. And he was, of course, attacked seriously and cruelly, one should say, in a time when he was already ill. So one should take all that into account. But he returned. The government was not really defending him, to be, courteous. But they had to bring him back to be the co-chair of the commission, after Douglas Murray was, keen to show that in fact the journalist, what the journalist was doing is unfair and not something that is acceptable for democratic standards. And I claim that this final report, which was the work of Scruton, most of that was actually written, the text itself was written by Roger. And I think that it should be taken as his intellectual testament, and it includes the actual provisions that the future of this report needs to meet in order to realize the potential of it. And as we heard today from Robert Adam, it is on its process to come true, which is the dream world of a philosopher. Anyway, that's about his life. And now I've got 5 slides about his work, about the output, the legacy. First of all, I will have only one slide about politics, partly because you all know it much better than me, but also because I think that the important issue is here to see the connection between his politics and his interest in the arts, and so I will focus on his views on arts. But this is my position as far as his politics is concerned. Jacob already mentioned Burke, and he added Hegel, who was indeed a rather important philosophical influence on Roger. Most of the great conservative minds from Coleridge through the British idealists and Hörcher had a very good German philosophical education. So learning in Germany is quite a fruitful way to learn the conservative tradition, together with the German experience of totalitarian regime. That's part of that heritage, unfortunately, or for historical reasons. But my position is that beside Burke, the other major influence, intellectual influence on his politics is the common law of England. Not of Britain, but of England, and that's a distinction which one has to make. Because, of course, the Scots have a different legal system and heritage. And the common law of England was known to him through his study of the law in the Inns of Court in London. So not at a university, but a proper workshop experience that he went through. So he does know, he did know the legal tradition of his country from direct experience from those who actually practiced it. And that's why I claim that that's the crucial influence to understand what legal concept like trust or stewardship means. It comes from the common law tradition. And now about his views on art. First of all, about his aesthetics, his general philosophy of art, which is published in that small volume on beauty. I think that it's important to see that his interest in beauty, in art, is rooted in the same source as his interest in politics, and that is homecoming, the topic of our conference today. So I think that was a very, very good choice by the organizers, because both of these major interests of Roger come back to homecoming. In beauty, you can realize in beauty, even though you have got a fragile human nature, that indeed you are created to be at home in this world. And that's the reason why he has got this interest in beauty. And what he pointed out was that the British tradition, or in fact even the conservative continental tradition, was based on a common interest in politics and the arts. His examples from Hegel, Chateaubriand, through Ruskin Arnold, to Oakeshott, Claudel Eliot, and all those, is an experience of an interest in both simultaneously in politics and in the arts. And in particular, he has got an interest in architecture. We had a lot of very rich discussions of the topic. I would focus here on a single paper of him in his book on the classical vernacular, which is, I think, the better one of his books on architecture. So I would propose you, if you haven't read anything by him on architecture, start with this one. These are small papers or short ones which introduce the adult, the fully developed theory and style of Sir Roger. And the point that he wanted to let us understand is that building architecture, building houses is the same project as building one's life. So there is always this connection between what you produce in the form of a techne, of a profession, of a technical sort of knowledge, is connected to your own judgments in a practical life, in your existential choices. That's the same sort of thing. You have to judge the beauty of a building, and you have to judge the moral goodness of a certain path that you want to take or want to avoid if it's bad. That's the first connection that he makes. The other one is that when we say that a building is beautiful, what we say we mean by it that it's appropriate, that it's of the right scale, i.e. that the individual building finds its place within a more general context, in the context of the city and in the context of the other buildings. As we individuals have to find our home within a context of a larger group, the same way the building itself has to find its space in the urbs. So that's the connection between the civitas, the political community, and the architectural environment, the urbs, the individual house and the individual citizen. They all have to find their fitting place within that context. And that's why he said that the external and the internal has to be in harmony. You, in a way, project yourself into your buildings, and what is projected is your internal side. So the two of them, the internal and the external, has to be in balance. None of them should take a lead. And that's why we were talking about earlier about the eye of the beholder, as if that was the most important. Well, that's one part of the game, but the other part is the object that we observe. The two have to find each other, otherwise the occasion is missed. The right moment when we find the appropriate, the chorus, with the term of Cicero, the Roman statesman and thinker. We did not have the occasion to talk about music, and that's something that I lacked. The more so because I don't know much about music myself, but that's not the case about Roger. You know, he had that fantastic wide panorama of knowledge, of theoretical as well as practical knowledge. I don't know anything about fox hunting either, and I do not drink wine, but these are, you know, all of his talents. But I'm now talking about music, and in music, his choice is for Wagner, and I would never go for Wagner. So that's even more interesting for me, what he finds in it. And I think that what he finds in it is again connected to homecoming, but this time in a metaphysical sense. Because what he discovers in the operas, basically the operas of Wagner, is that the human being is in search of love. Well, we all know that, of course, as long as we don't forget it. But in our search for love, the irony is that we almost always miss it. That's because of our fallen nature. We always love the wrong one, and it's always the wrong one that love us, except for the case when the two fit together. And here again, you see that his whole panorama is interconnected, because again, what is needed in love, and that's a reference to his book on sexual desire, is to find your fitting partner, and that's the difficulty, because there are so many options, and you only can find the right one, or should find the right one. And if it happens, what is happening, he claims, is redemption. And that's because he did not believe, he did not arrive to a final belief in God. That's something which is his personal faith, I would say. To believe in God is a question of grace, and perhaps that did not arrive on time for him. But what he experienced beside beauty in artwork is the beauty in love that in his second marriage he found. And in that he had the parallel for the story that he discovered in Wagner's opera, which is that in love we can experience the redemption on this world, in the world of human beings. And that's the sort of metaphysics that you find. It's a very constrained sort of metaphysics. It's not, a theology. He did not ever try to do so. He said that philosophy cannot actually address that issue. In that sense, he was a Kantian. But he claimed that in art, in the experience of artwork, like in music, we can experience redemption here and now. What have we got here? The final slide, which is a collection of photographs of Roger from his youth and from his later life. And this is because I think that if we want to make sense of his life and legacy, what we have to understand that he has got many lives, the different lives of Roger Scruton. I think that's what we need to address and take home with us. Because he was so talented, he was in that respect in the poem of God. He had got a talent for friendship. He had got a talent. Yeah, that's the first picture where he is standing with some of his student friends, like John Haldane, the natural law Thomistic philosopher from St. Andrews. And the other one is about political friendship. We mentioned already Aristotle, who beside Plato was crucial importance for him from the ancients. And this is of course Václav Havel, the Czech dissident and later president of Czechoslovakia and later Czechia. And I also have some photographs of his later life, including practical life or the life of the ordinary human being in his natural environment, at his home, with his family around him. And doing the daily duties that we all do have to do. And also the intellectual armchair philosopher. Now here is Roger in the armchair, and that's something that he also exercised. Not only the practical side of our human tasks, but the theoretical, the vita contemplativa was also crucial for him. And up there we have got this picture with him playing the organ of this small chapel that he kept returning. Why? Because he discovered that in this chapel it was the ritual was according to the old prayer book, and that's why he, the tradition was still alive there. So he had to participate in it, because the tradition only survives if we participate in it. Thank you very much for your interest.